All right. I don't know if any music. I don't think any music came through. Let's try this one more time. This is why you don't switch things last minute, right? Like 30 seconds ago. Uh, it's fine. Let's go default audio out and audio input. Yeah, we're good. All right. Can you hear me? Testing one,
Yes.
two. All right, cool.
Have it out there.
Welcome to this week's What the Heck. We're back with technical difficulties right at the beginning. I'm pretty sure I played a good minute of a track that you couldn't hear, but that's okay. Um, Today we've got Tim Code, aka Enthusiastic Electrons, and Alex Barnett, and we're going to be talking about sequencers. But first, let's do a quick intro. Let's do who you are and the least used what's the least used module that you have in one of your cases.
So not standing by because obviously
Right.
that's the least
Not ready to, not just gathering dust over there.
right. Yeah. Well, I'm in Enthusiastic Electrons, and I edit moving images professionally. And actually, I think the least. Well, it's not in the case anymore. So of the ones it always stays in the case. I think the Disting Mark IV. It's one that I got because it just does a lot of things, and
Yeah.
but I don't know, there's something about it. Like I like the idea of it. I like the people who make it, and it's very useful. But for some reason, I just don't love the menu-ness of it. And it's not that I'm, opposed to computers and digital modules, because that's actually something we're talking about today, something I'm building. But I don't know. I just don't use it that much. Or actually, the things that I just use it as an adder. So I actually just bought an adder last week to replace that. And I use it to ping sometimes, but I ping filters.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but I've always been willing to build up. Like I started out with just one module, and I'm someone who's always like, I build just like, what do I really wish I had? And then I get that. So like I've been, generally all the modules I have are in use all the time. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, most of mine are as well. The disting that's something I've heard other folks say about the disting. Maybe Alex is back. I'm not sure. I'm not getting any video or audio from Alex, but yeah, the disting. Again, like you, I really like the idea of it, but I haven't really been convinced to try it out. Even though I am really limited on space, and it's just a super small, ultra utility module.
I have to say though, I found things. I think I am going to start using it a lot more though, because a couple of weeks ago I was watching Woke was doing something, and he was using it just as a sort of tape playback, and I don't have any other playback. Sometimes I've fed something into the Monsoon, and I'll capture a 2-second clip, and I'll save that buffer for future use. But in terms of just like actual playback that you can scrub through or speed up and slow down, I don't have any module that does that. So I finally, the other day, I had something I wanted to. Something I'd recorded on the computer, and I wanted to do a whole bunch of audio processing to it. And I was like, the easiest way will just be put it on SD card, play it back. And I think I'm going to be using that for a while now. So
yeah, I mean, that'd be cool to see it. Is it? Oh, there we go, Alex. I can see you and probably hear you now. We're doing intros. I asked who you are and what's the module that's in your case that you use the least. You laugh. Everyone's got that guilty laugh.
Oh my God. I bought this module and it arrived about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. and it's friggin' amazing. Think of it as ears plus several. So if you're familiar with ears, like it's all about like taking external input and threading it through, and then creating envelopes from the amplitude. So it's got an envelope generator and the rest of it. This thing is by a company called let me see if I can pronounce it properly. Sewepol, and it's like the pumped up version of ears, and it's sitting there. I have ideas about how to use it. I know I want to use it, but it's entirely unused right now, and so that's the big guilt trip that I've got right now.
That's not too bad. I'm trying to think. What's the one I use the least? It's kind of a toss-up. I think that the two that I use the least are the clock module, because I mostly clock from my sequencer, and actually the phone dial, which is pretty funny because it's the most front and center, but I just forget to use it sometimes, or it's like attached to the lead voice and the lead is playing something very plucky, so like the phone dial doesn't really, like, if you play it during something plucky, it just sounds broken. I guess.
Well, here's something, like, maybe you're not using it for audio, but you are using it for looking awesome. So because it's just there doing its thing,
I'm using it for that, and I another thing I like to do is instead of running audio through it, I'll run a gate signal through it, which is
nice.
Pretty fun to retrigger ADSRs and stuff.
That is cool.
Yeah, and I also have this. Let's see, switch. I don't know if that's any closer. I just finished this module that you can't see because it's in the very top left. Right here with the buttons hanging out like skeleton eyes or something. It's a sequential switch. I'm super stoked to depatch and really give that thing a run for its money. But yeah, well, definitely the clock.
Sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was not interested in a sequential switch, but I got some modules from that person, and they threw that in there as sort of a surprise. And after building it, I can't stop thinking about ways to use it, so it'll be a fun one. Now I want like 3. All right. Started streaming 2 hours ago. No, Anton, the way the EMS server sort of works is like streams sometimes get glued together in YouTube. So it was like the whole music. But welcome Anton, Wilcast Messiah, Schmooster. Who else we got? I think that's it right now. Cool. All right, let's get to the thing I'm really excited about, which is your sequencer. Like I'm super stoked. Like, I don't know anybody who's made a sequencer, so I'm curious to see what you did and what's the thought process behind it. Like, Malort, that's a drink I regret having too much of. Yeah, tell me more about it.
So when I started, I've built MIDI controllers for a long time, decades. Mainly for video, entirely for video. And I've actually never used MIDI for music except for getting a keyboard into a synth or a keyboard into the computer. But that I rarely even do because as soon as I started getting into modular, the first thing I had was a key step. And I was like, I need something to play music with a key step. I got a synth. And then I was like, there are much cooler ways of triggering the synth. So anyway, when I started doing it, I realized that you could program little chips. You could program Arduino's Teensies. I use Teensies a lot. Do I have one? I've got one lying around somewhere. But yeah, so did some cleaning the other day, so things are now in bins. But I thought, that's something which I could actually do is program sequences and that kind of thing. All of these complicated sequencers, like that's actually pretty easy in code, and so. A couple of years ago, I thought that's what I'll do. I'll start, getting some other modules and then make my own sequencers and clocks, like doing a clock divider is, just a couple lines of code really. But then I realized that there's a bit more to it in terms of if you plug 12 volts or negative voltage into a teensy, it'll blow up. So I've been learning that since then, getting up to, my, audio, analog electricity 101. And I finally have a basic idea of what I'm doing. But so as of yet, I still haven't actually built a sequencer module, but I had a couple ideas before I hit that wall. I was like, I'm going to do this one and this one and this one and this one. And this is the first one that I sort of have worked on. And a lot of it is based on 20-year-old music theory class. So I minored in music composition in college. And I studied, I was really into soundtracks, that sort of music. And so I learned a bit, I didn't go heavy into theory, but I learned a bit of theory, and we learned different styles, and I've forgotten everything. But I remember little bits and pieces, and the things that stuck, basically what I'm doing is I'm running with that, and so this one is based on 12-tone music, but it's completely wrong. It's not actually based on 12-tone music, but it's based on the part of the process that I remember. And so with 12-tone music, that sort of dominated composition for a large part of the 20th century, I believe. And it's the kind of the
12-tone composition, just like the 12 notes in the standard European
in a way.
scale.
And so here's what I'm going to describe now is what I remember, which is probably completely wrong. And people who actually know something about music can correct me or shake their head.
It's not me.
But basically, it's what I remember the assignment was, and I loved it because it was it's these strict parameters, but then you can work within that. And so I actually really enjoyed it. You have a grid of, so you have your 12 tones of 12 notes in a Western scale, and the idea is that it progresses through without repeating the same note. So you make a tone of just going through the first, the third, the seventh, the fifth, the eighth, the 11th, going through until you have, I guess it would be 11 notes without ever repeating. And once you get to the end, then you repeat that sequence. So that's your tone, your row that you have. And then what we did was, and once you hit a note, you can't go backwards, but you can repeat the note as many times as you want. And then you can also do things like structure them vertically instead of horizontally. So you could have the first 2 notes of your sequence, you can do the next 3 all at once as a chord, and then, just sort of mess with it that way. That part is not part of the sequencer, that serial element of it. But then to make the grid, what you did is you took the intervals. You took the intervals between the notes. So between your first and your second note, you say, okay, it goes up a fifth. And maybe the second and third note, it goes down, 2 steps. And then in the next one, it goes down 3 steps. The next one, it goes up 4 steps. And so then you basically make a grid where you have those relationships. And then you make that's on the x-axis. On the y-axis, then you take the same. So the next one down from that top one is now 5 up from the tonic, and then 2 up from the tonic, or whatever your sequence is. And then based on that, you start with there and you go across. And you can go backwards and upwards. So anyway, this I'm sure everyone's just rolling over, probably all the people who know about music. But
it just takes me a minute to visualize what this is.
Well,
point is, so now we'll see it let me throw this sequencer up.
Yeah.
The idea, so
because I'm itching on the form factor, like I'm following in concept, and then there's always this like, what does the interface look like around that?
So here's what. I'm going to reset this one. Reset sliders, and I can make this bigger. Let's see. This is a bigger version. Is it? Actually, do you just want to go full frame?
I'll go full frame.
Yeah, let me go. I'll just switch over if I can find my. I don't do presentations a lot, so okay. All right, so this is basically it's modeled as a max patch at this point. First, I decided to model it as a max patch because I do know max enough to sort of make my way through things a little bit. And so anyway, I built this to see if it was even worth pursuing as an idea, to see if it was any fun, and see if cool things came out of it. Let me make this bigger. Get much bigger. So it's the interval sequencer. So first I'll just make it 12 scales. I'll just start I'll just do 4 steps right now. Also, it's 12. It's 12 step sequencer. So I'll just start the first one here. I've got it going into the no coast. Too fast. And 2 things going on. All right, there we go. Okay, you hear this? Hopefully it's loud enough.
Yeah,
It's
we can
good.
hear it.
Okay, great. So anyway, these are not absolute values. This is the thing that's sort of, I haven't seen this, and probably maybe there is a sequencer out there like this, but I haven't seen it yet, where these are not the absolute values from the tonic. These are relative. So I'm going to go up
They're relative,
7. So now it's going up a 4th. Now it's going down up a 4th and down a 2nd, and then up a 5th. Let me add a couple more. 0, it'll stay the same because it's not changing.
Right.
Okay.
So you're basically picking a note, and then everything else is relative to that tonic, that first.
Well, what's happening
Sort
is
of.
like, so here it's going up a 4th from that one. Now this one's going
Right.
down a 2nd. So what happens is there's a ripple effect. If I change this slider, everything to the right of it now is going to change too.
Oh wait, hold on. So, okay, so the second one you have at +4, right? So everything else
Yep.
is. So the note after it is relative to it, not that first note. It's just relative to
Correct.
the note before it. Oh,
Exactly.
interesting. So you get some wild, probably pretty unexpected
and it's-
stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, see here, if I'm changing this one, everything to the right of it is now changing too. Now, here's rollover. So now it's not resetting. Without this on, it'll start from whatever my tonic is. I have that as an A.
Right, but with rollover, it's continually going, and you could
So
potentially.
now this will
run into,
be subtracting 4 from wherever we ended up here. And you can see over here at the far right side is showing you the pitch, since it's just MIDI at this point. And also, this is now on a 12-note scale. So if you hit the top, it'll roll over that many. So say you hit the 10th out of 12, and you add 5. You go 1, 2, and then you'll go down to the bottom and add 3.
Okay.
But you can change the scale to whatever you want, however many notes you want. So here's 2 octaves now. That was just 1 octave. Okay, now I'm gonna just turn the rollover off. Go back to 12 so we can see what's happening here. Now, 2 other things you can do. You can reverse the direction. That's what happens if you're going backwards. And then here, you can switch it so instead of adding, it will now subtract instead of add.
Yeah, I think this could be really cool.
So now
it
here,
is really cool.
now, and then it's got 2 going on. So I'm going to add the second one now, the second clock. And because it's going into a monosynth, I'm going to put a delay on. So now, this should, hang on, what's happening here? This should be reset. There's still some bugs down here. This doesn't seem like it's quite right. So now the top one is doing addition, the bottom one's doing subtraction. Now I'm going to have the top one roll over, the bottom one's not.
Quick question: Is this quantized right now, or chromatic?
Yes. Yeah, it's chromatic. I mean, it's a quantized chromatic scale. So it's all 12 notes. It's a chromatic.
Right.
12. Yeah, so it's not quantized to any particular scale, other than all
Yeah.
12.
Antone
And then-
Antone
Wait.
asked if will get progressively, or could it get progressively further and further from the start point? And from what I understand, that's a yes until you turn the rollover on.
Yeah, and that's just a matter of math. It's like if you're if you have something where it just happens to add up to the same number, it might repeat. It might come around again after three cycles. But if you have some odd number that you're adding at the end, it might just keep going. Now, another thing here is maybe the gates are too high.
Only go up or down in prime number
That's
values, and you'll get some cicada rhythms.
Yeah. Okay, now the other thing I've got here, now I'm doing the delay, so otherwise they'd be in sync, you see. But I built this in. This is just basically between clock 1 and clock 2. This is when the two clocks are synced. This is doing something. So I can divide. So now clock B, or the row B, is running at half speed. Now another thing I did, and this is actually, I had this plan and then I learned about the Metropolis. And I was like, that's very cool. That's what I was thinking of doing. So you can add number of steps per beat here. So here, this will pause for 3. It'll be 3 on this one before it continues. So that way you can have these go out of sync. Or if you wanted to do something, I could have this advance one step every time the top goes through an entire sequence. Well, if they're all 6, they do that.
I'm trying to picture what this would look like as a physical device.
Yeah, and then you can repeat the trigger if you wanted it to repeat instead of just having 1 and then pause.
So can I ask one question?
Yes.
This goes back down to the quantize against scale. And I want to make sure that I understood the ethos, or let's say the philosophy behind why you're demoing a chromatic non-scale version of this, because there was something you were saying about like the 12 and all the rest of it. So I'm just genuinely interested is how you're thinking about that.
Well, I mean, you could run it through a sequencer if you wanted. I mean, one thing I was thinking about doing is adding a section which is the serializer as well, where it won't repeat notes. It's basically like a quantizer. I was thinking about doing this as a quantizer, just a standalone thing where it'll basically, if you get one note, then it won't repeat that note until it's checked off all the notes. And so it'll go to the next closest one. And then that way you'll have no repetitions. You could do that. Basically, I was thinking that this is in the programming of this. So if you wanted to stick within a particular mode, rather than using a quantizer to do it, you would just do that yourself in the programming of it, like in the sliders. You just basically, as you're tuning it, have it go to the next note that's within your, what you want. Although you're right that as soon as you start rolling over, then you start to get some weird dissonances and whatnot.
I think the point is like it would be interesting to see like if there was like a button where you could effectively toggle on like a quantizer for our modular. Like often they have like preset scales. Like you can say like I want everything to be in the E minor scale, and it'll just leave out like even if those sequences might hit those notes, it'll sort of leave those out and round up or down one or something.
Oh yeah, that'd be easy. I mean, you could easily do that.
Yeah.
Within Max, or just send it to a quantizer after this.
Totally. Right.
Or basically the idea is. So I'm just going to show under the hood here for a second. It's this is what Max looks like, and this would just be a couple. This would just be a couple lines of code, to do all this rollover math if it was actually just code, but it's not. So. So it's a little bit of a pain because there's a lot of toggling.
Yeah, no, but like I just want to say like how much I appreciate where you're going with this as an instrument, and then I think that like new instruments come along and you have an idea, you have a ethos, you have a philosophy behind it. Me, because I am not classically trained, I will tend to, like when I have a sequencer in front of me, I'll be like, one of the first things I'll do, right, is like, well, it's going to be C minor or D
Right.
major or and then see if I can just explore the space, understand like how it does its gating, how it does its like progressions, what are the knobs that turn something relatively vanilla into something a little more spicy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I feel I'm experiencing is like you're giving more latitude around that, which is amazing. And so, like, is there a way in? I can go in as a way in and to say, hey, is this, 16 slash 8 step sequencer? I can create polyrhythms. I can this, that, and the other. I can make it chromatic or not chromatic. I can like fix it to a scale. I really love that. I'm just all I'm getting at is like I'm really loving it. Actually, I love
Oh, great.
the work you're putting it into it, and I'm just like trying to dig into like the ethos of what you're encouraging, or the space that you're encouraging the player to explore.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something I definitely would like is some feedback to hear what, if quantization is something that, would really add to it, then that seems like it would be a good thing to add and to include. There are some limitations just because of the, the faulty, the thing that I'm basing it on. I wanted to have some limitations or sort of parameters built into it. So, the two rows. So, I have the two rows going, and right now the idea is if it was, once it's a hardware version, you could plug a clock in. I'm not sure if it would have an internal clock or not. I'd love to not have to program that, but I mean, it's not hard to program. It's just a matter of making sure it's solid.
Right.
But anyway, like it'd be a clock in for A and B, and if B is unpatched, then it was just basically be in sync with clock A. But I might also have these built in, like the clock divider and the delay built in,
Yeah,
just so you can do these without having to,
So like I describe it this self, and please don't interpret this as a negative. It's not. But it seems opinionated in even the number of steps. Yeah.
Well, that was
even the number. Yeah, even
that's what I was getting at.
It's not 8, it's not 16, it's 12. And that expresses an opinion, which I love. I'm just interested in the ethos behind the opinion.
Well, that was intentional, and that's the idea with the 12 was that sort of a nod to the inspiration was it's this 12 tone, so it's within the 12 notes, even though you can have that your scale is as large as you want in terms of the number of octaves you'll cover. But I was thinking that 12 would be a way to, it's different as well. So I thought that would be a kind of a parameter that you could, would force you to work some other way. And of course, I could not do that easily. But another thing as well is with these, with being able to set the number of steps, you could easily have, just add, have it so it's 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, pause, and then you're in a 16-step sequence. Right. It's just you're not filling every single note necessarily. I could do a 16-step, but also I thought the 12 would be just a little different, and that's the whole idea with this, is that it might make you think. It's sort of like a composition tool in a way. That was what I was thinking of it as, is some way of sort of playing with these and then getting immediate feedback as you change the parameters, and I try to come up with some melody.
I love it. And so
also, it's just like you have to. If I'm thinking about really building it too, I was like, that's 4 fewer.
Well, that's a segue. Like, because Heckseven asked a few moments ago, it's like, well, what does the physical form factor look like in the transformation?
Well, I'm going to stop you right there. I want to come back to this real quick, but Benjamin had a question about what's driving the step advance for it.
Well, in this version, right? No, so this right now, what I've got this max patch is Max is designed for music, so I just have an internal clock on that. And then the master clock here just starts that going. And so it's actually quite accurate. This is the kind of thing you could drive other things with. If I was to keep it as a max patch a little longer, I probably would have some way of getting a clock from your system into that. But that's hardware based as well.
Right. And then another thing that you said that sort of caught my attention due to my own failed experiments was clocks via micro like Arduinos or what was it? It's the ESP32. That was one that I tried to build I got some kit in the mail, and it was like, make a jam box and program it. And like I did that, but like the clock is so unreliable. Like you can hear it. Yeah. If you have 16 steps, it's like do.
Well, it depends on what you want. Worst. Yeah. Do I have? I think I've got them sitting somewhere right around here. The Teensies. I don't know where they are. Anyway, the Teensy is the microcontroller that I just love, and I've used them in a number of projects. And the latest one I haven't used yet, the Teensy 4, is powerful. So that I feel like if that could actually be fine handling a clock. The 3.2 and 3.1. I mean, those are what were, I think, in the original Ornament and Crime.
Yeah, the Teensies are a little more. I think the Teensies are more powerful than
those will be able to handle it fine. And for this, I was thinking I would definitely use a Teensy for this one, just because it's doing a little bit of math and it's not doing a lot. It's not doing any audio processing or anything like that, so it should be able to handle it fine. But the nice thing about the Teensy is that people can also, I'd like to keep it open source, so it's easy to tweak and upload. And that's the thing is with this, once you have the hardware version, I was like, well, you could just make it into a standard sequencer if you wanted to just rewrite the code.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing. That, like, what is it? Noise engineering. With they came out originally with like the Reverb module. Is a DSP based platform, and so like you can just like go for it. Like, and so is that part of what you're thinking about, Ben? Maybe I
was thinking with that. I mean, that's also like just showing this as like a work in progress. Is like I'm not, holding onto it as a, it's like release, some trade secret or anything like that. Because I'd love to get feedback, and it's just, it's sort of sharing the ideas with this. And now, like I said, like I haven't used a lot of different sequencers. I've used SQ1 and the no control, and that's pretty much it, and the key step. So that's something, I'm curious to hear. You're talking about a different sequencer later, maybe. I'm curious to hear feedback. Like, how important is it, for instance, to have internal clock in a sequencer, or is it cool to just plug, Like
well, that's what I was going to ask. Right. Like when you're looking at modules, right? Like when you're designing this, to me, this is a rapid prototype to give you the feel. So you have more. Yep. You have a lot more features than you maybe would necessarily build into hardware. And due to the nature of modular, you can sort of offload a lot of the things that you're doing. Like, I probably wouldn't futz with the clock, because then you got to worry about timing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a clock divider. I feel like clock divider circuits are relatively simple, and you could probably do that pretty trivially, even just with the
software.
TC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they could.
So maybe a clock divider switch of some sort, of switching knob, or like what are the things that you find the most essential that you would need in a module versus the things that you would maybe offload due to hardware constraints, sizes, components, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So this one, I've had a number of different ideas about how I was trying out sliders. At first I thought, I'd like to have physical sliders just so you can look and see at a glance what's going to happen next. But I've decided against sliders because it'd be nice to be able to save and recall. And so the current thought that I have right now is to have maybe 3 rows of LEDs. The top row would have would indicate or just show roughly whether it's going up or down and how much. So, if it's blue, then it's positive. If it's red, it's a negative. Right. And the brighter it is, the more it is. And so it'll tell you at a glance what it's going to do, but not necessarily specifically. But you can push a button, and then the second row will show you exactly how many steps it's going in one direction or the other. And then in the other row, at a glance, will tell you how many steps each step will pause for, or how many beats per step, if you're doing that whole, Metropolis thing. And then there would be some other things. So then in each note, I was thinking then each step would have could have an increase and decrease button. So 2 buttons per step, and then you could have that so that that's adding or subtracting the interval, or you could have it so that that's going to add and subtract voice A's number of steps per step, or voice B's, and then maybe some other things like that. So I just keep it, it's still going to be sort of a little bit large. At first, then I had an idea of how to make it tiny, but then I was like, no, it's not. The whole idea is to be able to play with it as it's going.
Right. So I'm already thinking about how I might do this, and a couple of things popped to mind just because, like, if you see things, you want to copy them. I think the BeatStep Pro is actually, it's in the garage. I'd go get it. But it's got a little screen that tells you, it's got a little 8-segment display that tells you, or 7-segment display, 7.
Yeah.
That tells you what note each thing is. Like, as you touch a knob, that display then adjusts to that.
Right.
So that means instead of having multiple displays, sort of like you described with the LEDs, you just have one display to sort of tell you what the note is.
Right.
But I think you could maybe even abstract it more, thinking like the OPZ sort of is all these colored LEDs that are mysterious until you get used to it. But like you mentioned, like red or blue for positive or negative, right?
Right.
You could make it so that, let's say you have 12 steps or 12 knobs even.
Oh my God, brother, Heckseven, I love you, right? But like, fuck you. Like, fuck you on that shit. I can't. No. But
12 knobs, so you can do them all quickly, and each one has a little LED over it that's red or blue, depending on where it is, or maybe green if it's dead center, right? And the brighter the red it is, the more positive you are. The brighter the blue, the more negative you are. Like that kind of a thing. Like you could do some stuff like that.
I understand what you're getting at, but like, oh my God, no. And this is the interesting thing about this whole space. It's like different brains work in different ways, and so what are you optimizing for? I don't mean that as a thing. By the way, I'm messing around. Like I'm actually. If anything, I'm agreeing with you strongly because brains work in different ways. And like, how does that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was thinking about as well. I thought about, I was like, well, if I just had little LEDs, then it could be, I was like, maybe I'll do it in binary. That'll be, you could get 12 and, but yeah, no, I was thinking it would be something like what you're talking about with the color.
Yeah. It's like,
I was like, no, that's too much thinking. You want it to just be immediate. I know, because it's just the thing with the LEDs. I'm also thinking about practically, like, actually building it is before. This is sort of, I haven't done a lot with music, with microcontrollers and hardware, but I used to do a lot with RGB LEDs and NeoPixels, smart pixels, things like that. So I mean, I could program as many pixels as you want to do any color,
right.
And that's pretty easy. And that requires just one pin for all of the pixels if you do it that way. So I used to actually program LED on the subway when I had to ride the subway in New York. I was like, instead of doing Sudoku, I'd like program RGB code and see if it actually blinked when I got home.
But exactly, and I think this is the conundrum as somebody that goes from like, here's a cool concept into a product, into like, what do people like, what don't they like,
right.
And accepting that like not all people are built the same or wired the same or the rest of it, and that's hard. That's just hard. It's just a hard problem to solve, which shouldn't ever discourage anybody from trying it out, but like that makes it that's what makes it interesting.
Well, the thing with the RGB as well is when I started thinking about like, okay, well the shades, because here's another thing you could do with an RGB pixel, is tiny, but it has a red, a green, and a blue, and the values can go separately. So I was thinking, you could have red on for 1, red and green on for 2, green on for 3, green and blue on for 4, something like that. So it changes because you have, within the color wheel, 6 or 7 if you count white, or 8 if you count off different variables. But then I was like, but I also want to make sure that it's not, you have to be able to see value, because that's the other thing, is I don't want it to, because I know that a lot of people can't see certain colors. And so I was like, I don't want it to rely on that only.
I mean, this thing is, let's see if I can hold it in front of the camera and talk, is
Yeah.
not the easiest interface, but it does convey a lot of data in a very compact space. Like if I turn one of these wheels that I can't even, anyway, if I turn them, you can see the LED gets brighter.
Yeah.
If it's darker, it'll even change color. Like, I think that's a really elegant way to display a value. Like, don't necessarily, like, it'd be hard to associate a color with a value, but brightness with a center color that is essentially the detent, like the virtual detent for the middle,
Yeah.
and then a different color for the other side.
So that's basically where I was sort of lining at. That's what I was saying. The latest idea was to do that. Still have one, pixel per step.
Well, listen. I'm just gonna go for it, and and no, seriously, go for it. And you're in touch with a whole bunch of people and communities that are, they're hungry for experimental new approaches. And like, I think the way that you're going about it is like fantastic. Here's an idea, give me some feedback, keep going. And then one day, hopefully it'll turn into like a physical form factor
Right.
that could turn into a thing. I love that. Amazing.
And you could also like experiment with it as like a Cosmo module, because like, they're pretty big actually. And like if you were making this, like every one of your knobs can be gigantic, and
I
you
love
can
it.
make a panel that's 40 centimeters wide.
This,
I would get one.
Of course, now that I'm working on this, and now that I finally, so I've never actually really run MIDI from the computer into the module, the modular before, like a couple of days ago, when I was like, will this work?
Yeah.
So now maybe I was like, just keep it as a max patch. I could also make this into a max for live thing pretty easily. I've built some of those, and
I've been doing some hybrid stuff with the computer recently too.
Yeah.
I had a sticker on my computer that said "Look, Mom, no computer," and I had to like scribble over the "no" to justify using it in my music. But like it generally plays pretty nicely. So like even just making it available as a Max for Live instrument is a really good way to do it. I haven't had any issues, but I don't run MIDI out of my computer. I run MIDI into it.
Okay.
Audio. All right. I'm going to change it up for a moment. This is a random. Colin Benders, I'm sure we all know him, showed up on live Dutch television doing a cover of I Feel Love. This is like prime time Dutch television. I think it was like maybe Tuesday of this week, maybe Sunday night of the last few days. And he would like just banged it out with a live vocalist doing the Diana Ross vocals. He was like in charge of the modular, and there was a live orchestral band and like a live drum part being played, and it was amazing. This was broadcast live
with a live drum part. That's cool. So Colin was like probably sending everybody a click track.
Yeah, everything, and it's amazing. Like anybody that's tuning in, or like anybody, check it out. It was so good. It was so amazing. I was so excited because for Holland, this isn't the first time they played modular live on broadcast television, but this is a big deal, and it was amazing. I'm just throwing it out there. Incredible.
Nice. I will check that out.
And it was good.
That's something I like. I wish I would love to do modular with a live drummer. That would be pretty cool. Just learned that my next door neighbor's a drummer. See what he's up to.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up and watch it. That sounds like a really cool experience. It would.
Yeah.
It was so short though. Like it was 7 minutes because that's the live television, right? It's like
Oh,
this is
that's
prime
like
time.
that's a really long song for like normal songs though, right? Like modular, you can
It
do an
is.
hour, but like a radio track is like 3 minutes or
That's
something.
that's like
shorter.
I just turned on the oscillator. Robby says
I just finally got it in tune. Why is the song over?
Robbie says, will you still love modular when it becomes totally mainstream?
Yeah, but I'll get into a niche
it when it
version
was
of modular
cool.
like this.
Nice.
Sorry, my dog is very thirsty.
So, yeah, were you talking about doing talking about another sequence or two, or you talked about that last time? Never mind.
We talked about the pyramid last time.
Pyramid, right?
I think we talked about the pyramid and a couple other things, but like some of the things you talked about when you were explaining the 12-tone thing, or just the premise behind it, I was immediately thinking like, I think I can do some of that. I think I can actually do some of that with the pyramid. Like I can. It's got a bank of like MIDI effects, is what they're calling them. Essentially, like you can turn a MIDI effect that's called an arpeggiator on, and it does what it says. For a held note, it will arpeggiate it, and just based on parameters. But there's a bunch of them, and one of them is there's one that's like scale. There's one that's like quantize. There's a few others. I'm trying to remember which one, but there's one that lets you set. I think it's harmony or something, like notes up or down, sort of like you described. So it doesn't care what note you put in, but like if I hit a note, it'll play maybe a 5 notes up and 3 notes down all at the same time as a chord, which then if I run that through an arpeggiator, sort of does a similar thing. And if I have a few of those variants running, it could maybe do something similar, but I don't think it's quite the same. Like I don't think it would do the endless sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to have like what you were talking about with some sort of quantization, because one thing that I found with once I play through, say I have the 2 different lines going and they're related to each other, so they sound, they're connected. As soon as one starts rolling over but then the other one doesn't, then suddenly you get into these weird intervals where some of the notes sound good, but then I want it to go up 3 steps instead of 4 steps to still sound it sounds dissonant, which is kind of the point as well, but if it didn't, that would be cool. That's quantization there. So,
Well,
yeah.
right, like that's where quantization sort of helps you out. But like, I'm trying to think of uses for this, right? Like, practically for me, like almost everything I do has like repeating riff, whether it's a few bars or 1 bar.
Yep.
Whereas this could create essentially endless riff, and I think it would be like how I would use it initially is sort of like an arpeggio generator. Like I might run it through a quantizer, but just like sort of endless in tune arpeggio that's sort of out of control.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
even
So
just let it run higher and higher and higher until as a build up before a drop. Like could be cool, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do with this, and I'm planning on, I've been working on some other things, but soon in the next week or 2, I want to do a version of, make a patch with this where it's slow, it's long, it's like a long form generative thing, where the 2, they start out related and then they're still essentially related, but they drift and they get way out of sync, but then sort of come back together at certain times too. So that's
like extra crazy
version
version of subharmonicon, sort of like dual.
Yeah,
dual
I don't know. I was saying this somewhere. It was like last week where I was just when subharmonicon first came out. Like I'm really into subharmonics, and when it first came out, or it was released as the you can buy it version. At first I was like, oh, this sounds amazing, and then I was like, some people were like, it's it's cool, it does one thing, and and I also wasn't. I still want to do sort of veer more towards the experimental than the the East Coast or whatever. Last week though, I was like, I want a Moog, I want some harmonicon. So that's on my wish list, so like that's what I'm aiming for, later in the year maybe, because I feel like it's all the sequencing in it. The tones sound awesome, and then all the sequencing is just like exactly my kind of thing. So, and I would love to have something.
It's
that
pretty
sounds,
cool. Like I think it would be a
Moogie,
really great sequencer too.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of the patches I hear folks playing on it, like they sound like subharmonicon, which isn't a bad thing. Like guitars sound like guitars, right? It's how you play them and how you can make it like your own thing. But most of the ones I hear are pretty much just like a very vanilla patch that are, one's playing like 4 notes and the other one's slightly faster or something like that. Yeah.
So I'll play with one. Wait, there was something. What else? I forget what else I was going to say, but
I think it's really cool. I think was it the like the Moog event one, like before they released it publicly? Did that one have a vocoder or something? I feel like there was something else.
That's a different one. There was a vocoder one as well.
There was
a
vocoder, but like Anyway, it's
but that was based on an older, like an old, historic synth.
No, there's something they changed about it for the release, but I don't know. Either way, it's a very super cool instrument that's been on my list too.
I remember what I was going to ask. So a module has been on my wish list, has been Marbles. I don't have that. I was thinking that seems like a great jam partner for, playing piano. And then I learned about Bloom, and once I started looking into Bloom, I don't know what happens under the hood. I feel like it sounds like it does something like this, where you give it your sequence, and then it'll start changing it in a similar way, where it'll invert it or go backwards or something like that. But it's the way it chooses to do it is random rather than you turning a switch on or off. But I'm not sure if that's how it works because I've never used one. Has anyone used Bloom? No? All right. Well, something I'm going to look into as well. But that's one thing with this is I definitely add.
Hold on. Robby has Bloom. Robby, do you want to hop on? I can send you the link. We can talk Bloom. Got to wait 20 seconds for a rejection.
Phasing. I'll tell you about another sequencer, another module I'm working on, but. And then one thing though that I could do with this, I realized I need some CV in and CV out on this at certain points. So like the rollover, the direction, whether it's adding or subtracting, those would all be either trigger to toggle it or gate, or you could probably select depending on what you want to put into it. And then also I'd like to have trigger outputs from the different steps. Maybe not every step, but I find that really super useful with with the no control to be able to say, okay, I'm just going to grab whenever the 6th step plays, I'll trigger, plug that into something. So I was thinking that could have a couple that maybe are assignable. So every time you hit the end, it'll send a trigger, and then you could do something like plug that into the plus or minus. So as it goes, you could have one time through it's doing addition, and then automatically the next time through it'll do subtraction, and then addition and subtraction. So a way of further modulating what it's doing here. That's something that I definitely would like to build in as well. So it's not just doing the one thing and then you can change it, but it can automatically change as well.
Right. And that's something I think is somewhat common. Like the Evil Eye sequencer I'm about to start building over the next week or two also has trigger outs per step, so that you can pull a trigger out at like step 4 and put that into this input, a high-low input that basically flips the direction of the sequencer, so you could have it bounce back and forth every time it hits that step. It'll flip. Things like that. Yeah, the no control does. Yeah.
You can do that.
Let's see. I'm gonna check the questions real quick.
Yeah. It sounds like I just read someone was complaining about how it was hard to control the mutation, like what you're saying. So I was thinking maybe that's where this could step in, as you could have total control over the mutation, but it still does, changes your original sequence.
Right. One thing
still sounds cool.
I'm usually thinking about, especially now when looking at modules, is like, what's a thing I can do with it to like really quickly change the sound, like the overall feel, with like a flip of a switch or like turning one knob or something. Like what would you do, like if you had a sequence running, what would you do to really quickly just completely change the feel of it?
Yeah. Well, this one also
like a random button.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this one.
Well, I think that's
Yeah,
what makes really interesting sequences interesting, right? Is like these little opportunities to like vary stuff. Like it could be just like the gates, it could be other modulation over a filter. It depends on how you got it set up, which makes it interesting. It's like so I had this patch that I played on EMS this afternoon, just as an example. It's like, and it was really simple once I got it down. Once I got it down, there were like three knobs, three parameters, let's say, that all I need to do is like change them from like 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, whatever those things were. And those little changes could like change the pattern, they could change the acoustic feel of those things. And it's a great question, Heckseven, because like that, I think that's part of the art. Like you can get a patch that sounds amazing for like 3 minutes. Like what have you created? What have you set up that allows you to progress across like maybe 2 or 3 different dimensions across 2 or 3 of those voices that you've got? I mean, that's a trick. That's a trick.
Yeah, I'm still getting my sequencer game down here. It's everyone's hearing everyone talk about sequencers, and it was like I love the no control, the zero control, but that's one certain kind of thing. But I see people with the various tracks where you can have so many sequences going at once. But anyway,
Here's Robby. Here's Robby.
Hello.
Robby's here. Yeah.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'd love to talk about Bloom. I have a lot of experience. This used to be my primary sequencer. It's very similar to the Erica Synth Black sequencer, but like the cheap version of it. So it only has 8 steps instead of 16. It only goes up to 32 steps instead of 64. But where the Erica Synth Black sequencer has a magic button and you can choose the range of the random, with the mutation knob here, which is really hard to do because everything's backwards on the camera right now. As you turn that up, it's kind of like a built-in Turing machine where it will, if it's really, really low, it'll only occasionally change one note in the sequence. If you turn it up all the way, then every single note will be a mutation of the sequence. But the fatal flaw is that the mutation happens across the entire goddamn range of 0 volts up to 5 volts. So you'll have this like nice little sequence, and you'll turn up mutation and it'll go, what the hell? That's useless. It's just,
And there's
There's
no ability to be able to control that range of let's say modulation.
So it's just, in my opinion, that renders the mutation thing really not useful in almost all contexts. I've successfully used it as kind of a source of random. I just crank it up and I crank up the clock. I send audio rate clock into it and I essentially get random values out. That's kind of cool, but it's just not useful. So that's why when I hear your sequencer thing, I really want to, if not a quantizer, I want to be able, if not a proper quantizer, I want to be able to select the range, like maybe just 1 octave plus, even if it's just plus or minus 1 octave, plus or minus 2 octaves, that's perfect.
Yeah,
You can. It's got like
and so this is what the black sequencer is able to do, right? Like when you hit the magic button, okay, new pattern created, but you're able to define the top and the bottom and like range it, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, can I show you like
Yeah.
where's my? I can find my controls here. Was that it? Yeah. Okay. So oops, comments. Get that out of there. Okay. So this Yeah, so here's the scale. You can change the scale in this one. So that's the number, the octave range, and have it going up to 60 or down to 5 steps if you just want that. Buttons
Awesome.
for 1 octave, 2 octaves. So like I was doing one the other day, actually, a couple days ago. I did a patch with this first sort of official patch with other things involved, and I had it here at 24, so it's like 2 octaves, but the way that I have it programmed, it's just the first note is at the bottom. So if I had something going down as the second step, it would go boop and jump, subtract. So basically, if you're at 0 and you subtract 6, you'll end up, you go 0, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, so because it wraps around. So to offset that, I have the first note as 12. So now this way, if you're on a 2 octave range and you put the first one up to 12, then now you're starting in the middle, and so you can subtract from there or go up from there, and it will behave correctly.
I think that's a really intuitive way to describe your sequence, because you're not really, the numbers aren't really the notes, they're the offset.
Right. Yeah, it's the intervals. It's an interval sequencer. And so one thing that's cool as well is, so let me just start this up. Okay, so now if I hit rollover, it's going to go add 12 to that one. But if it's not 12, and if it was 0, then basically it won't do much. But here I can have it adds 8 every time it rolls over now. Something is broken. It's not rolling over.
Not production code.
What's happening here?
This is what happens when you live demo.
Yeah. Oh,
Demo gods are angry.
We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you.
Yes.
This happened to me yesterday.
But
reopen it.
I know what you're describing, and I think it reminds me of the Metropolis accumulator registers, or not a register, steps. The sequencer can accumulate, so every time it goes past a step,
yes,
it increases by 1 or 2 or whatever.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to play with the Metropolis, because so I had already sort of worked on a lot of these when I then learned about the Metropolis. So like the number of steps repeating, for instance. Let me zoom back in here. Oops. Over. Can you see it? Is it good?
Yeah.
Make it big. This is giant on my screen, by the way. Okay, so yeah, so I'm going to make it 3 steps. I'm going to start just 1, and I'm going to make it so it's actually going to the right place. Okay. Make it 24 steps. This will work now, I think. You can hear it rolling over.
But it's not dropping, it's not going above or below sort of the set range.
Right.
Yeah, it wraps around to stay within the right range,
But now it's going to do something else.
Awesome.
And then let me turn on the second one here. Oh, they are in sync already.
Later, Benjamin. Thanks for hanging out, as usual. Benjamin always has great. Such a
I'll
good
jam more with
knowledge.
this later. But
Yeah, no, it's cool. That's great. It helped understand the idea that like you're not going to get these, like, depending on how it's set up, you're not going to get super high or low or unexpected notes, I guess is really
right. But there was what other sequencer? There was some sequencer I was just listening to, or just watching a demo on the other day, which was dealt with exactly what you're talking about, Robby, with it like randomly picking something way outside the range. But it sort of would mostly work within the right area, but then sometimes it would go way outside.
I
It might have
think-
been that one. It might have been Bloom.
I
but-
think there's some capability within marbles to choose whether or not the random values it outputs is like very far away or very
Yeah.
close.
I've got to get at marbles.
But there's just nothing like that in Bloom. But I can tell you, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Bloom is a badass sequencer. It's amazing. It has 2 channels actually that are independent. It's fantastic. I mean, this was my main sequencer. It has a great master transpose input. So I used a second sequencer to sequence this sequence. The second sequencer was running like really slow, and that would basically be my chord changes, which would do
Right.
the entire sequence. It's fantastic, but the selling point, the mutation, is useless, which I hate that that's the case.
But Robby, you
I
said
just realized- I
something,
just figured out-
there was something about the Metropolis it was called a accumulator, or the accumulator thing, which allows you to be able to, within a range, for this step, change buttonized. So, like, what is it? You've got a 4-step sequence, let's say. For every third, it's going to go up, like transpose, but within the scale, and just you can dial it in and then dial it down. I think that's a really neat feature. Should be.
I think it's awesome. I think like every time the third note comes around, it goes to the next step in the scale. You can actually do the same thing with another CV processor / sequencer called evilization. And it's actually an interesting module that just came out recently. And what you can do is it'll output a random value, but you can increase the range as you can make the range grow or shrink with some knobs. But the interface is very difficult, and it's kind of menu divey.
Well, what's it called? I can get a picture of the interface going
it's
while you're
civilization.
civilization. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to write it out. Modular. So you're saying the interface is a little.
I'm just going to say, Robby, it's true for Heckseven and everybody on EMS. But I'm just going to say, Robby, I love the stuff that you put on. It's really always musical, and it feels good, and it sounds great. I really appreciate you, when you do hop on. It's awesome, man. Love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to keep it. That's kind of my thing. Is I like to be inside the box, but keep you happy. And there's the module. There it is.
So there's civilization. It's cool looking. I like the design and the colors. It's cool. But what were you saying that's funky about it?
Well, there's those 8 knobs and a mode
Right.
button at the top, and that is the entire interface.
Yeah.
And it can do a ton of shit, but it's all magic. Like hold down knob number 2 for 2 seconds, and then knob 1 becomes your offset, and it's like I'm gonna have to have the manual on me all the time.
Yeah, that's something I thought about with this when I was thinking about shrinking. First, the sequencer I was thinking of was going to be large, and then I was like, I could shrink it down. I was like, I could make it tiny, and I had a lot of those combinations, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds cool though. I don't. It's funny actually. The first question you asked was like, what module do you not use, or do you use the least? And I was saying I don't use my disting all that much. When I first got it, I was like, I need more quantization or quantization, however you say it, because I didn't have any, and I was doing a lot of just no coast, and it was totally all over the place. So I thought as soon as I got the disting, I was like, I'm going to use it as a quantizer all the time. I used it as a quantizer once, and I just have not. But I got beyond I moved beyond quantizing at that point. Perhaps I should move back to quantizing. I don't know.
Evolved beyond quantizing. That's rad.
Well, no, I just got other.
I'm trying to evolve to the point where I need quantizing. Building a sequencer just so.
Well, what happened was I got more modules that could actually be within a scale in the first place. So I figured out what the problem was here with this. I just patched up. So I had channel 1 going to this was going to MIDI channel 1, this is going to MIDI channel 2, and the no coast. I've had these set as LFOs since I got this, and only finally got it as a MIDI through. Like this MIDI going into here, this is the first time I've ever had MIDI into this thing. So I forgot that this was actually. So I need to put this to channel 1. So now we'll get everything.
Ooh.
Okay, so now what's happening is we're hearing it's alternating because I have the delay on at 50% between channel 1 and channel 2. Oh, I don't have. Hang on, let me put that back up. The delay up here is the relationship between the first one and the second one, row A and row B. Here's 25%, but 50% now because this is a monosynth. So this is why we get 2 rows with one sequencer. Anyway, so now I'm going to make row B subtract instead of.
How do you control the offset for row B?
But now I'm going to make row 1 roll over and row 2 won't. And then now this is one's subtracting. So instantly kind of cool. And then I'm going to change this to row 2 will now, I'm going to do a clock divider. Now I'm going to back to 1. I'm going to have this 2 steps. That one's going to be 2 steps. Now it's just the first 2. Oh, it's just -3 + 3. So hold on. See, anyway, that's fun. Just mess around.
You know what I'm realizing is that the enthusiastic sequencer. I don't know if it has a name.
The interval sequencer.
Yeah, interval sequencer. This does for intervals what Renee does for the order of notes. Is you enter in all the notes.
Yes.
But you can play them back in an interesting way. In this one, you enter in the intervals and you play them back in an interesting way.
I'm gonna get a Renee one day.
Hey, I'm just saying, I love that, right? And so, like, my only one bit of input is going to be the same as where I started with. Give me the ability to be able to either quantize that to a scale or even use a defined scales, and then I'm off to the races.
Yeah.
Next time.
Woohoo! Now I have channel B going into Hickory, pinging Hickory.
I was gonna say, could you plug channel B into some CV control on the same?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's exactly what you're doing there. That's awesome.
Well, now it's just pinging.
What a lovely ceiling that we have over there. Look at that ceiling.
Hello. Okay, yeah. Let me put. There's unfortunately, this is only going to be. Wait, I unplugged the wrong thing. Okay, BCV is now going to do something else. Unfortunately, it's only 1 volt, so it's actually not that dramatic. I'd have to add some voltage to scale it up for it to do anything cool. Anyway, turn that off.
So, I guess I have to install Max so I can help you beta test this because this thing's awesome and I want to play with it more.
And you know what? Max is cool because you can run anything. You don't have to pay for it if you don't want to save. And so you could just download Max and open this up, and you're good to go as long as you don't want to make any changes to it. That could happen. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Although I think it might be a 30-day free as well. So yeah.
I've never before been interested in Max because it reminded me. So I used to do a lot of software to find radio stuff, and there's this program that lets you build radio stuff, kind of like Max, where you just kind of drag and drop and interconnect boxes.
Yeah.
And I kind of started to hate having to do it, so I stayed away from Max when I learned about.
No, yeah, don't. I mean, if you know anything else, don't do it. Max is for artists who can't code. No, I mean that's not true. It's great. I love it, and it's it's very useful. It's really handy for if you're doing any. Like I've done a lot of video installations. I've never done any music with it, but video installations, it's just like it's really, you can plug anything into anything. But if you know how to code, did you see before? I don't know if you saw earlier. And I'll show you this whole. I've shrunk it down. This is what it looks like when it's not in presentation mode. And that's not fun, like it's I have to do a lot, and there's nested things here too, like you can open up, that's doing a whole, like that's within one of those things, and it's like you have to make all these. It's just you can just type it, like with this I could make it one, like a couple lines of code and say times 12, and then boom, if it was written out. But that said, I can make an interface that's handy and it's very fast. Like on the UI end, it's very fast. So, or the GUI or whatever.
I mean, I have similar issues. Like I do a lot of web prototyping stuff, and at some point my prototype looks like that. Like there's wires everywhere, and I'm just like, this sucks. I should just code this out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn. Like over the years, I started out with Max. The very first time I was like, how do I push a button and make it do something on my computer? And someone said Max, and it was like I looked at Max. I was like, oh, and it was like I can do anything. And
I took one look at Max, and I was like, nah, I do that
right.
for my job.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like I code for relaxation, because I don't have to. So. But over the years, I've thought, I should learn another language, a better language, like a more functional language. But it's the kind of thing where I've put so much time into Max that anytime I actually have to do a project, I was like, well, I'll just, I'll use Max this time. And then next time it's like, well, I've already done that. And so, at this point I can do a lot quickly just because I've built it up over the years. And so but finally, a couple of years back, I gave up on trying to learn anything else. So Max and Arduino C are like, I'm good.
No, it's cool, and Arduino C is great for. I mean, that's not going out of style anytime soon.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even like a couple modules I use were written in that, like as Alex was talking about, like this dual quantizer. It's just a little nano. There, yeah. Some code. Yeah,
PD. I was when I was learning about Max as well, I decided to go the paid route just because of the tutorials and whatnot. So
all right, this got super deep on the nerd spectrum, and I'm all here for it. So yeah, that was great. I like the enthusiastic sequencer. It's pretty dang cool. I really want to see some
totally.
My first instinct when I see it. Yeah, I can't wait. My first instinct when I see a new toy thingy is to how can I do this in ways that it's not that aren't it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to change your scale to be every single note and just start with the lowest note and just watch it continually go up and up and up over the course of until it's out of audio, human ear range.
Mm-hmm.
My dog starts barking, I'll hit pause.
But I mean, at that point, you just want an LFO through a quantizer.
That's true, but I mean, there's it's going up and down, right? It's going to torture you a little bit. It's not just, it's going up just a little bit. Maybe it'll go back down every you know, on the 12th step it goes down like -10 to sort of bring it almost back down and then back up more. And like it'd be cool as a really fast arpeggio, I think.
I think this enthusiastic sequencer is going to be the ultimate happy accident machine. Like this is the ultimate happy accident thing.
So yeah, here I've made.
But what's cool about it, it's repeatable. Like you can start a sequence. Like if you hear something cool, and you're like if you're doing a random LFO or something, you can't be like, can we go back 3 notes so I can hear what notes those were in order again? Because that was pretty cool. This you may have to start over and wait a minute, but like you'll get there again. It's not random.
I keep losing that. Okay, hang on. This is. Let's just try this, just quickly, and then stop worrying about it. Oops, what did I do? Okay, here we just have the first. It's just 2 notes now. It's going up 2 and then down 1.
That's cool to watch. That's really satisfying.
And that's all. Wait. Oh yeah. I still have this. I'm gonna turn off the repeats in the menu phone. All right. Okay. Now I'm gonna do rollover. And I've set the scale size to 60.
And then you get the Pink Panther. That's great.
And now the dog starts barking. Oh. That's weird. Oh, that's cool. Okay, somewhere in the math, the rollover math of like once it hits the top of the scale, it's not just going back to the bottom again. Here it's doing this. Hear what it's doing at the top here.
Yeah.
And then it comes back around to the bottom. It does something at the top and then it comes back around to the bottom.
Cool. I love that going up though.
Yeah, man, this thing can make really interesting, complex arpeggios.
This is gonna be sick for Prel patches, right?
Yeah.
Pre-orders start tomorrow. Check out our Kickstarter page.
Come on, that's fucking sweet. That's so sweet. So fun.
Give me a phone. Love it. Okay.
So good. So good. You know what? Just leave that up. You're going to play that. That's going to be the outro music.
I might. Is anything happening after this? Maybe I'll jam.
I don't think so. I think I was just going to call it because it's already 9. Well, it's been over. It's an hour and a half. So
all right.
I think it'd be a good idea to call. But we're going to have another one on this sequencer. Like I just want to keep playing with it. You know what? You just need to stream, and then I'll get that fixed.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, we had a surprise Robby guest and a super super quick Schmooster drop in, but Schmooster was getting some serious echo. So there we go.
It was the ceiling.
It was the Schmooster ceiling hanging out. Yeah. So thanks for watching. We're going to have the enthusiastic sequencer play us out.
All right.
Let's see.
Oh, damn. All right. Good night, people. I love you.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is good. Let me change my camera. We'll just pretend that what's on the oscilloscope is coming from your sequencer.
Imagination.
Imagination. This is perfect soundtrack for imagination. It's so delightful.
Getting straight up Stranger Things in here.
All right, everybody. Have a good week. Imagination.